Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. And today I am chit chatting with one of my dearest friends, Jeremy. We met in school, really, right?
True
We
story.
went to school for spiritual life coaching, and he became a dear, dear friend and wonderful spiritual mentor in a lot of ways as well. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to see you.
I appreciate you being here. We have gone through some weird things together.
True story. True story.
So I want to jump in with this first question, and it's kind of a biggie, but I know it'll give people some background of who you are and your journey. But so can you share a specific moment from your journey where you faced a significant obstacle or challenge, and how did you navigate through it?
Interesting question. So, feels like I get significant challenges frequently.
Me too.
It's funny. The seasons have been continually popping up in my head. And I think we all go through, those times where we have mad amounts of struggles and we don't know how to deal with them. And then we have those times where, everything's grand and glorious and peace of mind is there. I think, recently I've had some struggles. And it's interesting. Facebook has turned into this memory maker where old me is now coaching current me. But I think writing down my thoughts obviously helps me out a bunch. I say obviously, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But just connecting with myself, trying to focus on positives instead of negatives. Myself personally, and I know there's a lot of others out there that are the same way. My brain is really good at finding the negative stuff, and I have to consciously make an effort to make sure that I see the positives. So once upon a time, I was struggling a lot. I have anxiety disorder. And one thing I found I started doing on Facebook one day was just writing down my good things list. And it was a conscious decision to where at the end of every day, I would sit and I would think of all of the good things that happened that day. And I consciously told myself it did not have to be, I won the lottery or, anything major or big, it was somebody opened the door for me or, things just as simple as that. I saw my daughter smile or, legit just, these are good things. And I was making a conscious effort to recognize that. And through doing that, I did that for a year solid, every single day, did not miss a day. And it helped me, and it turned out that it ended up helping a bunch of people too. A lot of people started doing their own good things list out of that. And it was super cool to watch. It was neat to go to my kids' school, and people would come up to me in the auditorium, after the band concert and say, "Hey, I love your good things list. It's really like, well, I can't believe some people are reading that, But yeah, but now those good things lists that I wrote, 3 or 4 years ago, I look on my Facebook memories every morning now, literally, I'm not sad guru by any stretch, but I look at some of that stuff. I'm like, wow, I needed to remember that. Thank you, old me, for writing that down,
Yeah.
So that's writing. Writing has always been something that, whether it be music, whether it be poetry or just, getting my thoughts down, it's always been a way for me to kind of deal with my internal monologue. Sometimes it's healthy. Most of the time it's healthy. Sometimes it's not. But I think that's life, no matter what we do, there's going to be a dark and a light side, and try to focus more on the light than the dark. But, if there wasn't dark, we wouldn't know what light was. So.
Right. Right. And that's a huge thing. And so when you say like sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not, does that mean like sometimes you're writing good lists and then sometimes you're writing lists that are like, everything you want to say to the world, but don't really want anybody to know that you want to say it?
That, or if I'm writing poetry or I'm writing lyrics to a song or something like that, a lot of times that ends up being a wallowing in self-pity, kind of deal. But I mean, I get that it's healthy, to get that out. But it also forces me to stay in that mindset, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
You're trying to finish this poem, you're trying to finish this song, and you know, in an effort to finish that, you force yourself to stay in that, and it's not healthy if you live in that space for too long. So
That makes sense. It kind of reminds me, like, right, look at how many actors have fallen to playing the Joker.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, because
You
they've
immerse
just
yourself
embodied
in
that
that.
character.
Absolutely, you immerse yourself in that space, and you know, it's okay to visit, but you definitely don't want to live there.
And I get that. I mean, but and people don't think about that, especially from a creative standpoint, because
Mm-hmm.
when you are making art and music is creativity, right? It's that essence, I'm sure, that emotion that you're trying to get out. And it's like, okay, I want to finish this. So I
Definitely. I
gotta
would say
stay
there
in.
was a point in my life in my younger years when I was in a band that we played 3 and 4 nights a week, and I was the primary songwriter. Yeah, I look back on that, and I've said it before that I think I was addicted to depression. The only way I could write
Cool.
a song was to be in a bad space, and if I wasn't writing a song, then I wasn't doing my job. So looking back, of course, in the moment, I didn't recognize that, but looking back, I think it was an addiction to depression. That's the
Do you
only
think
way I
that's
could
something
feed.
all artists fall to? Because I know even as me as a painter, when I first got into art, I was in a dark place,
I think
right?
so. I think that, it's a strange paradigm that, misery typically spawns, some of the best art, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
through media or music or poetry. I mean, Robert Frost, you read, a bunch of his, and there's nothing sunshine and rainbows about any of that. I mean, so yeah, I think a lot of it is just maybe, people doing that to try to get it out and get past it. But I do think there's at some point, you're in a bad spot and you make the best painting you've ever made,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to make that again. It wouldn't shock me if somebody said, well, I need to go drink a fifth of whiskey and get seriously depressed, and then I'll have this success again. If everybody's coming around and say your best work was what you did when you were in your lowest spot, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough to realize and go through. That's why I've always said with, musicians, you listen to a lot of the bands, when you and I were in our prime, I should say. We're in our prime now. What am I saying?
Right.
But the 90s, you listen to Alice in Chains or somebody like that, and everybody talks about how great those songs are. Man, I listen to those lyrics, and they're tragic.
Yeah.
It's sad that, I, I try not to let myself get too far into it because I still want to enjoy the music, but we're celebrating this person's misery in a lot of situations. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great song, but man, what did he have to go through to write that? It's terrible. So
Right. And
yeah,
most
you
people
can.
don't think about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that artists in general can get caught up in that pretty easily, just to forward their craft.
I can see that because I know, like, when I started painting, to your point, one of my most popular paintings was this, like, bleeding heart that I was, graffiti, and it was just dripping, and it was like ripped and just sad. And, I almost threw it away because I was just like, nobody's going to want this. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
yet everybody wanted it. And then I
right,
tried to recreate it because it was so popular. And of course I couldn't.
right, yeah. Oh,
I
oh,
couldn't. I tried.
yeah,
And I was like, this isn't even the same. And I just trashed it. But I was like, I don't
yeah.
want to go back to where I was when I did that.
Good, yeah. I mean, it's our energy manifesting itself, in
Yeah.
whatever we're doing. It absolutely is. So I'm
No,
glad
and
you didn't go back there.
yeah, no, I could. I tried. I did try, but it wasn't
See?
even close. And the
Yeah,
funny thing is, like, nobody wanted it. I didn't go back to that state, but I just tried to recreate the painting, right? I'm like, I
yeah,
don't need the emotion, but you do.
yeah. It really does. Yeah, it's inauthentic.
Right.
Yep,
That right, and everybody picked up on that. You know what I
yep,
mean? They looked at it and went, "Yeah, no, that wasn't as good as your other one." And I'm like, "But it's
yeah.
the same thing." But it wasn't.
That's
So
crazy. I love that story. I've never thought about artistic media being in that same way. I think about the music aspect of it all the time, but yeah, it's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
was a huge emotional outlet because I can't. I wish I could have your talent. Like I would love to be able to play music or sing, or I don't have any of that, and my brain just can't do it. I've tried. You know, everybody's like, you got to learn, and it's like, no, I've tried. Like I'm gonna stick with paints and
Yeah.
and
It's awesome.
photography. You
Yep.
know, and
Oh
writing. I
yeah,
can do
man.
that.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
I'm glad you do.
yeah. Like that's just not. I but I have such a awe for people who can create music and watching you get into it because I really didn't even know that in school that you were that into music until you kind of shifted and all of a sudden you're like on Facebook jamming and I'm like, look at him.
Yeah, it was weird. My so when we had kids, my original band broke up, and we had kids, and amps were loud, and so I always had an acoustic guitar out. But I think I literally spent 10 years playing like Scooby Doo and stuff like that on the guitar for my kids. That was it. And then one day I pulled out one of my oldest Les Paul, and I think my son was 12 years old, 13 years old, and he looks at me and said, "What's that?" And I said, "What?" And it hit me that it had been like 10 years plus since I'd even pulled any guitars out and really
Wow.
done anything. So yeah, it was when my son graduated high school. My daughter's a senior now, and it was just last year was just kind of like, you know what? I think it's time to kind of start this back up. But it'd been 20 years since I'd played in front of anybody, and last year, actually 2022, the fall of 2022 was the first time in 20 years that I'd played in front of anybody. And you would think I'd
Dude.
have been nervous, but it was amazing. I had no nerves. It was just such a good release. My son came up and sang with me. My daughter came up and sang with me. It was the best. It was so awesome.
Dude, that's awesome. And that actually kind of segues me into this next question I had for you, which is music we know has a profound impact on our emotions and our experiences. I know for me, it helped me heal even.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe a particular song or a piece of music that holds special meaning for you and explain why it resonates so deeply with your
Mm,
journey?
that is, wow. That gave me goosebumps, honestly. There, it absolutely is. I mean, I cannot imagine a day without music. Man, I don't know if I could define just one. I mean, I'm always transported. You hear people say that, but
Mm-hmm.
I can. Wow, I don't know if I could pick one. It.
Okay, just pick whatever comes to your mind first that really speaks to you.
I'm speechless.
That's okay. We got time. There's there's no
So,
rush.
on. Okay, so I'll be a little more general. The
Okay.
band three for years and years and years. 311 is a very positive vibe band. They're always something that when I'm feeling down, I can put on a 311 album, or I can play along with the 311 song, and it will raise my vibration, in a heartbeat. Those are the songs that I think I probably connect to the most, just because it always brings me back to a place where I feel better.
Mm.
Yeah, I love so many bands. I love all kinds of music, but 311 is always the band that that gets me back into a better headspace, and a little more positive vibe. I
What kind of
actually got
music do
to
you perform?
I so I write a lot of my own stuff. The covers that we do, whenever I go watch a band play in a bar, I love hearing obscure covers.
Mm-hmm.
So I
I
don't
do
know if
too.
that everybody, okay, I'm hoping everybody else does, because what I pick to play is pretty obscure. But we do like Willie Nelson, we do Dirty Heads, we do Johnny Cash, we'll do Metallica, but we'll do a Metallica in my style. It's a little, it's a heavy song, but it's more in my style, which is it's heavier, but it's also Southern Rocky kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But do Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam. It's an eclectic mix of
I was gonna say
stuff.
you got Johnny Cash and Metallica. I mean, those are
Yeah,
two
yeah,
pretty.
yep. Arcade Fire. We do an Arcade Fire song. So I try to pick stuff that people are like, either they'll say, what is that? Or they'll be, oh my God, I've never heard anybody, do that cover before, which is cool.
That
But
is
yeah,
cool.
80% of what we do in a show is my stuff. And then we sprinkle in some covers just so people aren't bored. They can connect with the song that they know and feel good.
Do
But
you
yeah, I
find though
actually,
people connect with music even if they don't know the song? Do you know what I mean?
they
Like,
for sure. There's seems to always be one or two people in the crowd, that when you get done with a certain, there's a couple songs that I've written that I know will connect with the crowd in a different way. Um, and yeah, there's always a couple people in there that are screaming or, will come up after the show and ask me what that one was. And that's a super cool feeling. And
now
back
do
when we
you?
recorded CDs and stuff, you would people when we had
Yes.
physical media, people would come up and and tell me after they've taken the CD home, they listen to the song and they really this one song really resonates with them, and that's always super cool too. When we've talked about the writing process. When I write something, it was back then. It was usually I was in a super dark place, but
Yeah.
if somebody tells you that maybe that song connected with them and they get it, that kind of makes you feel good too because everybody wants to be understood, and have somebody get it, what you were, where you were at, and what you were thinking when you wrote it. So
Well, and
yeah,
sometimes that actually saves people, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? Like
definitely,
they hear a song and they like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, and like I feel like you seen me.
definitely, definitely.
You
Yeah,
know?
and for the artist, it's amazing.
Oh, I can
Uh,
imagine.
I went to a 311 show last year, and a good friend of mine, Lindsay, is friends with the band, and she got me to where I actually met Tim Mahoney, the guitar player, and
Nice.
I tried not to be like, I'm pushing 50. I tried not to be the 13-year-old. But I told him, you have no idea what your music has done for me. I mean, we're talking 30 years.
Right.
For 30 years, you have been a part of my life, whether you know it or not. And you can tell that he. I'm not. It's not from a place of ego at all either. But you can
Yeah.
tell that I hugged him probably more times, than a grown man should hug a stranger. You know, I was waiting for security to like, dude, you can't hug him anymore. But it was that he's that genuine of a dude. It was super cool. It was super special for me to get to share my appreciation of his music, with him. It was super neat moment.
Well, that's what we do, right? Like I think any artist, whether it's painting or music or writing, like you're hoping that it touches somebody.
Definitely.
And then when somebody does, like I know when people have told me, oh my God, you're painting, or I've seen this, or it hits me, and I was never, I always got like, would you be upset if I told you what I see in your paintings? And I'm like, absolutely not.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like I loved hearing what other people saw because they're so abstract that it was like they would see things that I never even saw, and I'm like, that's amazing.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
that is
mean?
cool.
And you appreciate that so much. At least I think that's why we do it.
Definitely, definitely.
It's like it's a heart to heart thing. It's not like you said. I don't. It's not an ego thing.
Yep,
You know.
definitely.
So are you going to record your own album?
I don't know. I, I I've actually, so I hadn't written a song in probably 20 years. I've instrumentals I'd written, but I hadn't sat down and actually structured out a song and wrote lyrics. But I've done a couple in the last couple or in the last year. I don't really have any desire to go back and try to be a rock star anymore. I just kind of want to enjoy it. When I was younger, of course,
Yeah.
I want to play 5 nights a week, and from Denver to Kansas City, and and but I'm good. I'm good. Just if I get to play in a local bar for a bunch of my friends and family, and have fun for 3 or 4 hours, and I'm good with that.
Now, do you get inspired to write, or does it just come to you? Can you be doing something, or do you have to like create like a creative sanctuary space to kind of
I
focus on it?
I cannot sit down and just say, hey, I'm going to write a song.
Right.
I don't think it's ever happened that way. music just comes from jamming, like I'll
Yeah.
just be messing around, and there'll be a chord progression that sounds cool. And so that's what on Facebook, I'm always posting notepad videos, and it's legit. I'm afraid people are thinking, God, he's just putting stuff up to show off or whatever all the time, but it's
No.
legitimately just a notepad. Back in the day, we had cassette recorders, you know, you, you know, now it's
Yeah,
your
we made
phone and
mixtapes and
Facebook.
everything.
Yep, that's it. So now it's Facebook is my scratch pad. So, but no, I usually it's just messing around and come up with something I think sounds neat, and then a lot of times that nothing comes out of that, but then sometimes that melody stays in my head, and words pop in, and I'll write something out. But yeah,
Can you play for like hours? Do you find that time doesn't exist when you're playing music?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same as when I was writing books, whenever, and I'm sure it's the same when you're painting.
Yeah.
I think any artist when they and that's what we want,
Hmm.
it's an escape. Yeah, and sometimes the word escape can be considered unhealthy, but I think it's a healthy escape, certainly above things that I've used to escape in the past. But but you know, yeah, it's a beautiful, blissful thing when an artist can get lost in what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a flow state. Like for me, time, hours go by. I forget to eat, but for me, I would always see my paintings before I would paint them.
Oh
And even
wow,
though they're abstract, like people would say that to me, they're like, well, they're abstract. I'm like, but I would always see them. And then I'm thinking, how am I supposed to do that? Right.
that's
Like,
amazing.
I don't know how to do that. And then it comes out once I get the materials, just like I would know, like I'm in that space now. I haven't really created, to your point, in like a year. I haven't painted and I'm wanting to get back into it, but it's something that I see. I can see it in my mind's eye. And then, there's many times where I'll be like, okay, well, I don't know how to do that. And yet it ends up coming out somehow.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
it's got to be the right moment, the right energy. Yeah. Yeah.
now when
I
you
get
guys
it.
play live, do you ever switch? Like, do you read the energy of the room ever and go, huh, maybe we should switch up some songs and play this instead?
Yeah.
Like, does that
Yeah,
ever
we
happen?
definitely do. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we open up, it's just myself and my good friend Grant, who plays percussion. So
Hmm.
it's just a two-piece band. We're not Kansas having 8 people on stage, but we actually open the show usually with a jam, and part of that is just to loosen up and for he and I to kind of get synced up together. Neither of us knows what we're doing. It's literally, I look at him and just, you start playing a rhythm, or I'll have something in my head and I'll start playing and he picks up. But it's a good way to gauge the room too.
Hmm.
You can watch people if you start out with an up tempo thing, and you do it jazzy something or other, or a heavier thing, or if you just slow it down and make it something really melodic, and you kind of watch the audience and see who's watching, if anybody, and that kind of gives you an idea of what the night's going to be like and who's going to like what. But yeah, we never play the same set order at all. Always trying to find what songs flow better together and make more sense. Sometimes it's hard when you're switching from Johnny Cash to
Metallica.
Metallica, and yeah, but yeah,
I can imagine. I mean, that's quite a switch.
yep.
So, do you think? I mean, you and I, for those that don't know, we went to this college. I was there, but we all went remote. It was a Southwestern, Sweeha, Southwestern Institute of Healing and Arts, and so we went through a lot of spirituality courses and stuff like that. And do you find that any like that training? Because we had to do a lot of personal growth
Mm-hmm.
to really get certified in what we did. We had to go through a lot of personal growth. And do you think that training now has impacted a lot of your life? Even whether you're doing it or not as a practitioner, but just you personally.
Absolutely, yeah. I talk about seasons, and that was, I absolutely needed that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
without knowing how bad I needed that time in my life. We were talking a little bit before we went on. Um, I felt very connected to everyone. It was a bunch of like-minded individuals. The energy
Mm-hmm.
was great. I just felt like I could be 1000% authentic to myself and not have to hold back and not worry about judgment or anything like that. So it really became a very easy way to find personal growth. And I think, if more people could find spaces like that, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a college or anything like that, but man, the way we all connected, you know, it it was special. It just was special. You know, we've never met in person, but I consider you my brother, and I mean, it
Oh,
feels like
totally.
we've known each other all our
Yes.
lives. Um, it, it's it was just special time. And yeah, I look back on that as an adult. I think I grew more in that time, than any other point in my life.
Yeah.
Of course, getting married and having kids, that forces you to grow in a different way and
Yeah.
change. But on a personal level, that was mine. It was that was absolutely my journey, and things I had to learn about myself and things I realized about myself. Yeah, it was awesome, and I still use a lot of them to this day. That doesn't mean I don't forget about some of those lessons at times, and hopefully at some point I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I needed that, and get back to there. But yeah, it was a wonderful time, and I'm grateful to have our friendship coming out of
Yeah.
that is one of the best things.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, this isn't like your typical school. Like
Yeah.
people that go there are, we're getting certified as spiritual life coaches, sound healing, Reiki masters, like, it's all the kind of whatever you would want to call, I guess, woo woo, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways that we used to joke when we were in it, we felt like we were in Harry Potter going to Hogwarts,
Yep.
that we had this little special school of like these people. And it was an authentic space unlike any other I've ever, and I went to traditional college and, I had fun there, but this was
Yep.
definitely life changing. And so when we went to the school, it was like you really kind of had to open up and be vulnerable and show yourself and be like, this is really who I am,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I wish there was a way for more people to experience that.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I wish we could experience it constantly. But it's a season. I, my old self, I read something that I wrote a couple weeks ago, something to the effect, peace of mind is never meant to stay.
Mm,
The, it That's why you have to savor it when you have it. You have to realize it's not going to hang around. Something is going to change, and you have to adapt, and you have to find the next way for you to find peace of mind.
I love that.
It's a struggle, but I think it's a struggle for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you fixate on the fact that I've got peace of mind, and then you're destroyed every single time that peace of mind goes away,
Mm,
it's that much harder to find that peace of mind every time. You have to, you know, yes, there's disappointment probably involved, there's pain involved, but to have the expectation that you're going to be blissful and happy constantly is setting yourself up for some hard stuff.
yeah. I would agree with that. And I like the idea that the seasons, because I think it's so important and really a connection to earth. And I think it also kind of comes to, and that kind of leads me to the next question of, right, like we know so many people out there, and I know we were part of that too. And going to school when we met, we were all searching for a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like what are we here for? And so I want to hear from you. Could you discuss a turning point in your life where you began to feel a sense of purpose or calling, and how you transformed that?
Definitely. So it kind of goes back to that, the Facebook posting. So I'd mentioned I started doing a good things list.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, at one point, I I woke up on a Monday and you see all of those memes where like, I'm dreading Monday, I'm dreading
Mm.
Monday. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to dread Monday. So I wrote this post. It was just a positivity post. Um, and a lot of people saw it and a lot of people dug it. And I woke up on Tuesday and I'm like, I'll write another one. And Thursday and Friday and Saturday. And it turned into an everyday thing. This was before Sweeha.
Mm.
I started it before Sweeha. It continued into Sweeha, but it it really resonated with people, and it made me very happy that my positive thoughts were helping people feel better or giving them strength, or
Mm-hmm.
um, and that was really a turning point, and where I wanted to start coaching. And that was the spark to really look for some place to expand that and help people and be there for people in a way that could be a little more than just a post on Facebook. And I think that's driven me, still to this day. I don't formally coach, but I definitely informally coach, in my day to day interactions with coworkers, or, yeah, the things I learned at Sweetheart, I definitely, still implement, but my drive to want to help people, be happy and feel good about things is always there. That never goes away.
Do you think it affects your music?
Absolutely. I, it, it doesn't affect how I write music.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, I can't sit down and just write a happy song.
Right.
And still to this day, if I'm writing a song, it's probably not the happiest thing on the planet. But uh, watching people dance while I'm playing one of my songs it's awesome. And if they've been to enough of my shows and they might know one or two words, and I look down and somebody's singing it, that's even cooler. They're having a good time, and the energy is good. I'm providing them a way to charge their battery for a couple hours, where hopefully they're having a good escape while I'm having an escape, and everybody's feeling better. So
Well, and I think in some ways, we always think coaching has to be this one-on-one.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This conversation, but there's really many ways that we can coach.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And
I
I think
completely agree.
expressing it in different ways, it doesn't always have to be this one-on-one in-depth session. You can do it, and I think music does that a lot. I know for
Mm-hmm.
me, music helped me with my brain injury. It was the only
Sure.
thing that could get me to, and even still now, to get me to like calm down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just listening to things that are soothing, or sleep music, or certain frequencies even.
Yeah. Binaural beats. I am a binaural beat junkie.
Are
Yeah.
you?
Oh, I'll put that on in my office for 8 hours straight. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It depends on, it could be for mood, for my anxiety. It could
Mm-hmm.
be because my wrists hurt. So you know, uh, I'm a believer in energetic, you know, effects on mind, body, and spirit for sure. So,
Well, you can see it. You know what I mean? There's even research where you see where they'll use music to help stroke victims learn to
mhm.
walk again. And you know what I mean? And like I go to sleep every night to 532, or not
Nice.
530, 432, whatever hertz
Right.
that's, on there. And just, I don't know, it like I'm out before the track's even over. You know what I mean? It just automatically, I could feel it just kind of take the anxiety out of my brain and just go, okay, it's time to come down.
Right. I
This
sleep with a
frequency.
giant box fan that's on high, but it serves the same purpose.
Yes.
It's a brown noise that it gets your brain to settle down, and but yeah, the vibration from it, it's all energy. It works for me.
Well, and exactly. I mean, as a musician, I'm sure, because that's what blew me away. It was like, okay, him and I were prayer partners. That's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
We took a class together, and when you had to link up with another student and become prayer partners, and so you would have to call each other every week and say, "This is what I'm struggling with. I need prayers for this. Right? This is what's going well." And we really bonded over that, and realizing, okay, like this is the way we connect and be honest. It helped me. It was weird for me to do that in some
Oh, for
ways.
sure. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That's why I was so grateful when you like messaged me. You're like, "Hey man, you wanna like be partners?" I was like, "Yes," because I had never done anything like that.
Yeah. No, I hadn't either. I mean, yeah, the concept's crazy for people to think about, probably. You
Oh,
know,
I'm sure.
two people that don't know each other at all, and you're supposed to bare your soul and ask
Weekly.
them to, yeah. Uh, but yeah, it was amazing. And now look at us.
I know. Well, it really was, and I realized like that first week, like I don't know, I could just trust you, and I think we automatically had that with each other. We just understood, and to me, prayer is its own frequency.
Definitely. And
You
I think,
know,
some people get hung up on the word prayer.
totally.
And I don't, prayer is energy.
Yes.
It's, you can call it a vibe, you can, whatever. I'm not averted to whatever somebody's religion is they come to me with. I relate it to, to me, it's all an energy, and I appreciate it all. So yeah, anytime somebody comes up to me and says, "Do you want to pray with me?" Heck yeah, I'll do it. I'm down.
Right.
It's the same as a hug. I am all about hugging. A hug and a
Too.
prayer. That, there you go. That's
There's your next song.
that's it. That's it. Yeah. A
That'll
hug
be
and a
your
prayer.
that'll be your first happy song. I'll get a prayer. Because I think right to that point, that is prayer. Because I know even when you and I had to call each other, I looked forward to that
Mm-hmm.
because I was going through a very big transitional, tough time in my life. You know what I mean? I just moved to Phoenix, didn't know what the hell I was doing. Enrolled in school right away and felt very lost, felt very alone because I was still,
Yeah, man, I remember. Yeah, you
yeah.
you were in a winter. It was a season
It
for you.
was a
Yeah,
season. It
yeah,
was, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, and now I'm gonna bare my soul to this guy in Kansas. It
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
but you helped me so much through that, and I looked forward to be able to go, and we got so comfortable with it, to be able to just even text each other. Like we would text each other when we didn't even have to meet,
Yep.
and be
Well,
like,
and
"Hey,
it was
man, I need a
supposed to be
prayer."
like, I don't think it ever, like, it always ended up being an hour, hour and a half, something. You know.
Totally,
Yeah.
yeah.
The class, the assignment was call your prayer buddy up and say this, and say a prayer and go. And it was always an hour, hour and a half, something. Yeah.
It's like, okay, we better go.
It's a good thing we didn't have to record those,
I
and send them in. Teacher would be like, guys, I can't listen to all this.
I know.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, just so you guys know, we did have to do that for some
Yeah.
exercises. You had to record stuff and send it in, and the teacher would listen to it. Because you would think, and that was the interesting thing about that school too. I was afraid working remote, I wouldn't have connection, and yet,
Yeah. And see, I never considered it. It was never, I just wanted to go to school to learn how to help people.
yeah,
The connections were such a beautiful byproduct and happenstance that, you know, it, it just never occurred to me that was even a possibility. It's like, and just like you were getting ready to allude to, working remotely, you would never think you could make those kind of connections,
no,
remotely. But God, it was such an amazing time. It was so awesome.
it really was, and I was surprised by that. And for me, I mean, I lived in Phoenix. The school was in Tempe, so I could technically have gone to the school, but traffic and everything, and I was dealing with a lot then, and I was like, no, I'll do it remote. But I remember thinking I was at a time where I wanted connection so badly, and I'm like, is this just isolating myself more? But it really proved to me that, to your point, you can be remote and still have really in-depth connections with human beings on a heart
Absolutely.
and soul level,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you're willing to show up. And so
Yep.
I'm going to ask you this one.
Oh,
So we know,
that feels heavy right off the bat.
well, we got to do a little bit of shadow talk. Not
Okay.
anything major, but like we know as we're talking about school, and this is something that most people don't realize, and that's why I always say, I'm just going to put this out as a misnomer. When you work with a coach or you work with a practitioner, like do your homework. You know what I mean? Like there are those of us who spent a lot of time doing the work to be able to call ourselves this, and there's a lot of people out there who have done no work and call themselves that. And so I'm just saying, be cautious of that because we didn't get to those positions without doing the work ourselves. So I'm just
Definitely.
going to put that out there. But so back to the question at hand, which is, we know that personal growth involves self-reflection, self-acceptance, right? That's something you and I have learned in a lot of lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about a moment where you confronted a part of yourself, a shadow, and how that process contributed to your growth and understanding of who you really are?
I think just coming to realize that, my anxiety disorder has always been kind of a thing. And it was never something that I talked about. It was just something that I dealt with. A few years ago, and you were there for me. We weren't going to school, but
Mm-hmm.
I I had the worst attack that I've ever had, and it went on for months. I lost 30 pounds in like 5 weeks. It was brutal, and I didn't start to feel better until I started talking about it more. I had to open up to my employer, and it was so bad I couldn't hide anymore. I physically couldn't go to work. It was, it was awful. But I found out that being open about it, again, for whatever reason, a large part of me is always afraid of judgment. I don't know where that comes from. I need to do some work on that. We can talk later. But I've all there's always a stigma about mental health and things, and the company I work for is a great company, and I've been there a very long time, and I've achieved a position that I was afraid that showing that kind of vulnerability was going to show weakness, and that I had fear that maybe they thought I didn't belong in that position, or but my body forced me. There was no option. It was bad enough to where I had to talk about it. And it turns out that everything that I was afraid of was absolutely not true. So I think, that moment has taught me to definitely be more open about who I am, and how I'm feeling, and be more accepting. Accepting's not the right word. Maybe giving people more credit than I would normally give them. That people aren't always going to be judgmental. People will be there for you. A lot of times, people will surprise you at how understanding and caring they can be. The news is. I don't watch a lot of the news, but you always hear about all the bad things going on in the world. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of good people in this world, and you got to give them a chance to show you that they're good. So that moment really has helped me. I haven't had thankfully I have not had an episode like that since. I have minor episodes, but I'm also I like to think that they've been minor episodes because I've been able to share the struggle, and I can say, oh, I'm in a bad spot, and I'm allowed to try to recover from that, as opposed to having more anxiety build on top of it because I'm afraid somebody's going to pass judgment about it. So, yeah, I think that was one of the bigger things, especially in my recent years.
Do you know what triggered that?
So I don't. Usually, what happens, there's always a series of things or something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has anxiety. It's
Yes.
interesting. I've had people tell me, well, I get anxious, but it's anxiety disorder is a different thing than just being anxious. We all have that fight or flight response kick in. What happens, and at least for me, I don't want to speak for everybody that has disorder, but my anxiety will get to a level where something breaks inside. And I can tell myself, my brain knows that there is nothing wrong. Everything's cool. It's all going to be fine. But my body does not let go. What the chemical reaction or whatever it is that normally happens in the body that shuts off the fight or flight response does not. Thankfully, I don't get there very often. Usually, maybe once every couple years. But when you get to that point, there's not a whole lot you can do. Your body just really has to work itself out of it.
Yeah, I know my mom has dealt with anxiety. I mean, I know a lot of people that have. I got anxiety due to my brain injury, not to
Mm-hmm.
that degree, but I've seen it, I've seen it debilitate. In fact, I had to trick my mom into learning how to meditate to help her deal
I
with
remember, yeah,
it.
and that,
Yeah,
that turned out awesome. Yeah,
I know. I mean, that
yeah,
worked well, but
yeah.
you know what I mean? It was just, it would debilitate her to, she would call my dad from work and just, or panic and have to run out of a grocery store. So I know, when we're saying anxiety, it's big. These
Yeah,
are big panic attacks, and it's just,
yeah.
you
It's a
know,
different thing than getting scared. It's just,
yes.
and I've always said, if people say I don't understand, and I just say, be so grateful that you don't understand. Like
Yeah.
it really, uh, if there's one thing I could change about me, that would absolutely be it. I would kick that stuff to the curb.
Now, have you had that your whole entire life?
But at least all of my adult life, yes. I can
Okay.
remember sitting in the first time I went to college. I can remember sitting in a study hall, and I thought I was literally having a heart attack, and I had no clue what was going on. And I lived with it, and I self medicated for a lot of years.
Yeah.
That was not the smartest thing to do, and I sometimes wonder if that didn't damage my brain a little bit more by doing that. But I got through it, and now I deal with it in a little bit better way than I did then. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Well, I know when
it's
we were
just
growing up, it wasn't really like, we all know it was there, but it wasn't a thing. Do you know what I mean?
right.
Like, nobody talked
Yeah,
about it, whereas now you see it everywhere.
yeah. Well, and I think there's every generation has their pressures and things, and I
Yeah.
think anxiety probably has been around for
Oh, for
generations.
sure. Yeah.
But it goes back to the stigma, especially in males. Uh, and I don't mean to ostracize
No.
a
Yeah.
female perspective of it, but we're supposed to be these big tough guys, and for I mean I've broke down in tears many times having an anxiety attack, and it's a very scary thing. I can't imagine somebody in the 40s and 50s when you're supposed to be this ultra male role model character, and there's no way the majority of those people were letting that emotion show like that. And that's too bad. That it's a tortured life to
Yeah.
not be able to let that out. That's like that goes back to the question you asked. If there's one moment in my life that finally, you know, it's too bad that it had to be that severe of a moment to push me to do that. But you know, looking at
Well,
the
and to
bright
your
side of
point, it's
things,
not really accepted. It was not taught that, guys, hey, just go ahead and say that I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm breaking
right?
down. You don't.
Yep.
It's not taught. It's not like a common thing of, yeah, yeah, go ahead and do it. I mean, we're getting there now.
Yeah.
Now we're getting there and saying, yeah, of course. But to me, that's just insane to think that this human being, male, female, I don't care, it's a
Hmm.
human being,
Right.
is going to experience all of the emotions.
Definitely.
Why do we compartmentalize and say, no, you can't at least show that?
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, hopefully, there's definitely, to your point, there are absolutely a lot more people talking about it, and hopefully that translates into more people being understanding of it.
Yeah.
I'll say again, uh, I'm grateful to my employer. I got that. I was allowed time off. They understood. It wasn't there was no pressure for me to get back to work. They just wanted me to be healthy and right. And, and man, what a blessing,
That's amazing.
and the talk about peace of mind. That there's some peace of mind there that I know it's going to happen again. I know it is at some point, but I don't worry about it as much happening again. I know that I'm going to be able to have that time and handle it.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge blessing. And that just gives me hope to see that a corporation,
Mm-hmm.
right, cared more about its employee than its business, so to speak,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, because that's what we need more than anything.
Definitely.
I
Very
mean, I
grateful.
love that. So it leads me into I ask everybody on the podcast this question at the end, and it kind of leads to that is describe your spiritual North Star that guides you whenever you feel lost or uncertain.
Whew, man, that's a heavy hitter. That's tough. It's honestly just as much as I want to be kind to others, I have to remind myself that I need to be that same way to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, is that spiritual? I don't know. I know when I feel connected, when I meditate, when I'm at peace. I shouldn't say when I'm at peace. I'm at peace more when I'm meditating and connecting. So meditation is something that I feel like I'm plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just silence. Silence for me is spiritual. Uh,
Yes.
now, my brain and silence don't always get along,
Mm-hmm.
so I've had to work at allowing myself to be silent. And then meditation is a hard thing for a lot of people, and it was hard for me to get figured out. But I find myself in certain situations, whether it be watching TV, whether it be walking through the store, or usually not when driving, but occasionally it does. I'm I I just feel like I need to close my eyes, and if I close my eyes, something happens where I just feel more plugged in and connected. It feels spiritual to me. Um, it's like somebody's tapping me on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, you need to reset just a little bit. You know, just close your eyes for. It doesn't have to be this Mondo 30-minute meditation session. Just close your eyes for a minute and take a breath." Um, but yeah, silence, walking in nature is something that I like. I've, as you know, I've in the last year or so, I've started getting into bicycles, just something to tinker on. But that has turned into something that's kind of spiritual release for me. Riding, just riding bikes, just getting out on the road or going on a trail. It's just you're away and you're floating, you're flying. You know, if I could close my eyes and ride a bicycle, that would be the best thing on the planet. But my
Get
wife
an
says that's
e-bike.
probably not a good plan. But
No, and I like, you know, it's funny because I've asked a lot of people that question, but I like the fact that you're questioning in a good way the word spiritual because that's
mhm,
really the point of me asking it, right? We have this idea that spiritual has to be this, like you said, 30-minute meditation, or but it doesn't. It's anything that connects you.
mhm,
Like
yeah,
you said, you know, a bike ride, a quiet walk in the woods, you know, nature for me is mine. You know, all of that is spiritual. And I'd like to break this, I don't know what you want to call it, glass house of spirituality. You know, that it's bigger than that.
definitely,
You know,
definitely.
it's personal. It's very personal, and
Mhm.
it's bigger, and it's whatever speaks to your heart and soul.
So there's this. Speaking of spiritual, I've had two moments in my life that I cannot explain. My wife and I have gone to the Rocky Mountain National Park two times in our life. We've only had two vacations without the kids, and this I don't know if it was 7, 8 years ago we went, and we're walking this trail, and it's just a bunch of pines, and there was this beautiful spring-fed stream, and we sat by it and chilled out for a little bit, and then we went up a little farther, and we got hungry, and there was a fallen tree, so we sat down and there was a snowshoe hare that came out, and it was mid transformation, and it was just wonderful. And we decided to start walking some more, and all of a sudden that just opened up, there was this aspen grove. I'm goosebumping, and I may even start crying while I'm talking about it. I don't know what happened, but I broke out into tears when I saw that. There was something spiritual. I mean, I am
You got the
It was
goosebumps.
it was absolutely one of the most special things, and I can't explain it. It was just there was something about that spot that I felt loved. I felt like I was getting a hug. Like it was the most special thing. Fast forward to last year, my wife and I went back, and one of my goals was to find this spot again,
Mm-hmm.
and we did. And I had the exact same reaction. The aspens, were quite a bit bigger, but it was still just a glorious, uh, indescribable spiritual experience. It was not in church. It was not anything formal. It was just, I felt loved. I felt like
Connected.
indescribable. It was so amazing. So in my life, that's probably, you know, the first time, especially, I've never experienced anything like it prior to that. It was the most wonderful thing.
I love that, man. I love that. I had a similar experience in Tetons National Park. That park, I don't, I can't. I get what you're saying. Like I can't even. I went to Jenny Lake and I was there by myself and just had this moment of awe. And I remember calling my mom and her even saying, because I had been to Yellowstone too, and she said,
Mm-hmm.
"Which out of the two parks do you like the most?" And before I even answered, she goes, "It's Tetons." There was
Yeah,
just something about that park.
it's crazy. It's crazy to that a space can do that to someone. But
Yeah.
there's something to it,
Well,
and
and
I'm
it's
not
the
going to
awe and
pretend.
wonder, and it's that, and it's being open to it, and just I think the biggest thing, if anybody can take away from this, especially this pod episode, is like just be open to it,
Mhm. Definitely,
whatever it is for you,
definitely,
you know. And by the way, I want one of those bicycles.
dude. Come to Kansas. I'll hook you up. We'll go for
I
a
do,
long ride.
I do. I need a bike, and every time you're posting them, I'm like, God, he's got the best bikes.
Yep. Now we can definitely get you hooked up.
Well, I definitely will be making that trip. My friend, I want to thank you so much for being on this episode with me and sharing your story. You are such a lovely human, and I love you so much.
I love you too, brother. Thank you for having me. It means a lot. It's so good to see you.
Absolutely. Hopefully, you'll come back on again and we'll chat.
Definitely. Anytime.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, remember stay curious, stay empowered, and keep shining your unique light. Love you guys.